Why negotiating is important. When you think about compensation, more so when you think about total compensation, what are kind of the four components about total compensation? What are they? Pankaj.
I think it's the base, the joining bonus, RSU, and there is one more component I forgot.
Sign-on bonus.
Sign-on bonus.
Sign-on or joining bonus. That's.
Yep.
And
Base
I think
bonus.
if you're moving from one of the public company to another public company, then you can talk how much RSU you have in the prior company and then compensate in that fashion also.
Yep, absolutely. Great answer. Great answer.
I want to say the fourth is benefits.
Vacation
policy.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Big three, obviously in the Q&A, Swapna, you got a base, bonus, stock, right? Base salary, bonus, performance bonus, whatever the case is. What does the equity package look like? And, you know, the fourth one obviously can be sign-on bonuses and benefits and, you know, what are the extra kind of quote-unquote perks of the offer, right? Like, do they have a work-from-home stipend? Do they pay your cell phone bill? Is there gym reimbursement, commuter reimbursements, matching 401k, unlimited PTO versus, you know, time you have to accumulate? There's all sorts of things that kind of go into that fourth phase. But for the purposes of what we're talking about today, we're going to focus on the base, the bonus, and the equity portion, right? That's why I mentioned earlier with the highest bonus that we've kind of had, you know, or the highest offer that we've had, it was year over year cash, not including the sign-on, right? That's what it was with the base, the annual bonus, and what the equity portion looked like. One other thing to take into mind is, and we'll talk a little bit about this, is, you know, if you're a publicly traded company, your equity is liquid. Basically means once it vests, if you have the opportunity in the trading window, you can sell it, right? If you're in a private company where it's not, you know, then we kind of look at, you typically will have a base, a bonus, and you get private equity, and that obviously kind of goes into what I consider to be like total direct compensation, because it's not all cash versus, you know, if you had an offer from like Google or Meta or whatever, that's considered what I would say is total cash compensation, because you can cash it out. You know, you can leave it in there and see what happens, right? But you have the ability to cash out that equity piece, right? So a lot of times I say TCC, total cash compensation. Sometimes I say TDC, which is total direct compensation, more so for some of your private companies. When you look at this slide that I have pulled up here, and this, I want you to take note, this is all Apple, this is all for the same level, and this is all in California. What are some of the key things that you can see by looking at this, that we have such a variety of offers, right? You know, you see 280, 260, then you flip this and you see, you know, 370, 425, 390. What do you think the reason is for that?
Is before a stock grow or after stock grow, or does that play a role here?
Potentially. Keep in mind that this piece of documentation comes from Levels. And so when you send, Levels gathers their data by people actually sending in a copy of their offer letter, right? So, you know, it's typically based on what your initial offer points are. So equity can play a part, obviously, as it flexes up or flexes down. What else?
I think the area matters. I think first one is like machine learning versus backend data and stuff like that.
You could say that, right? But like the ML AI guy's got 260, or the ML AI candidate, you know, employs 260 versus, you know, the biggest offer on here, security, 425.
Maybe good negotiation strategy.
Yes. Yep. There we go. There's one. Good.
Years of experience.
Good. What else?
Multiple offers.
Yep. Influences the rate. Here we go. So I've heard a few. Definitely heard, one I didn't hear. Relevance of past contributions, i.e., how well did you perform in the interview? They asked you certain questions. How well did you perform? When you're going through IK, what is part of the things that you're doing? Mock interviews, right? You're preparing. You're doing this documentation. You're doing this work, you know, to answer questions, whether you're on like a management track, whether you're an individual contributor track. You know, you're always going to get these questions. How well do you perform in the interview, right? What are things that you contributed at your past organization while you're interviewing at said organization and why it would be relevant to them? See, interview performance as well. Negotiation, leverage, competing offers. We heard that one as well. But there's a lot of things that come into play. One thing that we will go through is we'll spend a little bit of time at levels together as a class. So please keep in mind as we're going through this, we'll kind of look at a lot of things. And these are things that can happen at any point in the process. I think the biggest question I always get when running this class, first and foremost, which I know it's already been asked before, is what happens, when I get on the phone, a recruiter reaches out to me, I schedule time to talk to them, I'm set up to do the RPS. And then when I get in the RPS, what's the first question they ask me? How much money? What are your expectations, right? Because they can't ask you what your compensation is, right? They can't say, what do you make? What are your expectations, right? It's always first and foremost. So one of the things we fail to do often is we fail to anchor. And by failing to anchor, we say things typically like, give me the market rate. What is the range for this role? Why are these mistakes? Anybody can think why these might be a mistake?
We're pretty much giving the control to the company, because we are just asking yeah, I'm depending on you to give me the market.
Yes. Like, what if hypothetically you tell them, give me the market rate, or what is the range for this role? If you ask me as a recruiter right here, right now, what's the range for the role, Randy? You know what my response is going to be? Well, you know what? I really don't have a range for the role because we want to truly assess what level you're to come in at, and we'll do that through the interview process. At that point in time, once we have a level assessment, we've kind of leveled you, we can then talk about the compensation range. What's the other piece that I may share? I may share low to midpoint, right? Maybe low to 75% target.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's my perfect counter to that, right? What's the range? Well, we may say you're interviewing for like a senior engineering role, but then again, you may come in and you may completely crush expectations, and all of a sudden, hey, we're gonna look at this as a higher level role, like a staff level role, or we may assess and say it didn't do as good in the technical interviews as we were hoping, so unfortunately, we're gonna down level this to a 4, right? Like just a regular engineer, not a senior. So there's those pieces come into play, right? So that's why we don't want to do this. We want to know what our market rate is. And, now I know some locations, I know Colorado's one, I believe Washington State just passed the law too, where they have to kind of put some kind of median or average ranges for what the pay scale looks like in the actual job posting. So that benefits us, but that doesn't always tell us what's at the top end, right? And if we don't know these things, we have a tendency to potentially leave money on the table. I know it's not all about the money, but if there's another 25 or 50 grand that are sitting on the table, don't we think we should try to see if we can get a small piece of that, right?
Hey, Randy, quick question.
Yes.
on the ranges that are published publicly. Are they reflecting base or total comp? What are the components there?
Sometimes it has a kind of the makeup. Typically, it includes mostly the base, and then I'll say that there are some additional, pieces to this that could include an equity package as well as bonus structures and so forth. It kind of opens up the door to a little bit of the, kind of peeking inside the box, but it doesn't show you everything. I know as they become more and more probably prevalent, you'll start seeing this more and more out there. You'll start seeing more like, hey, but they're most likely going to kind of give you midpoints, right? Midpoint of base is this. Bonuses are typically something tied to a percentage of your base salary. Normally, I know there are organizations that obviously will say it's a certain dollar amount. So that would stay there at that percentage. And then the equity package may be like a middle of the ground type equity package, right?
So they would disclose, or they would put that number out as well?
Yep.
Whatever that is.
Okay. If it's necessary to do so. I know for certain things within my own organization, Colorado, it's more about we put out the base and let them know that there's a comp philosophy around, a certain targeted percentage of a bonus to your base salary, as well as equity, packages included in the offer. But typically it's more about the bases, which is okay. It gives us a starting point, right? That's reality. Again, we want to know our market value. We want to know what our worth is. So when we have these conversations later in the process, we feel confident where we stand. One of the things you'll hear repeated several times over in here tonight is is failing to create open timelines. By this, what I'm saying is if we have ambiguous timelines, we can kind of set our own pace for the interviews, right? So if we need to speed them up or slow them down, we really get to set that pace, right? And this is important because of several things, right? Ultimately, when we get through the process with this, we would like to have 1, 2, 3 or 4 offers at the end of this, right? You know, that's ideally what we want to do. Does it take practice? Does it take some patience? Does it take some planning? Absolutely. We'll talk about ways that, you know, we can, you know, kind of extend timelines and extend deadlines and so forth. But ultimately, we don't want to basically say, hey, you know, I'm ready to start, you know, in this date, or I need to be, you know, out by this date. Instead, we want to set our own timelines, right? We want to pace them. I'm just starting the initial interview process. When I see the right opportunity and I think it's a good fit, that's when I'll consider making the change. But right now I'm in no rush. You know, really, we want to set things up. This allows us to think about how we want to pace ourselves. A lot of the piece that we go through in IK is we talk about doing, you know, a lot of these interviews, these mock interviews. Sometimes we go and do, you know, we encourage you to do kind of interview preps, right? By that, I mean, maybe a tier 2 or tier 3 company on your targeted list and doing some interviews with them to kind of get in practice and get ready, right? Well, we can set those up while we look at our companies, like maybe it's Meta, maybe it's Google, you know, maybe it's Amazon, you know, where things take a little bit longer, right? You know, a Meta and Google process can take anywhere from, on a very good experience, maybe 6 weeks, but more like you're thinking 2 to 3 months for the entire process from start to finish. That's a long time. Whereas some of the smaller companies you may be inclined or interested in interviewing at may be able to blow through the process and you're done in 3 weeks. Please don't tell us you've been rejected by other companies. First and foremost, if you tell me you're interviewing with multiple companies, great. I'm probably not going to ask you who at this point, especially in the very first conversation. Probably going to want to know something towards the end. But right now, you know what? With this initial conversation, I know you're interviewing, so I'm not surprised by that. Thank you for sharing it with me. Just don't tell me you've been rejected, right? That raises a serious flag. Not quite red flag, but a serious yellow flag of like, all these other companies have potentially passed on this person. Do we really want to move forward with them, right? So don't let us know that. Again, keep things ambiguous. Do not accept the first offer. Unless it's absolutely the best offer you've ever seen, checks every box you have, everything you possibly imagine, don't accept the first offer, because we want to obviously keep those timelines open and we want to get multiple offers so we can sit down and evaluate what makes the most sense in terms of compensation, in terms of role, scope, manager, responsibilities. What are those intangible boxes that we want to have checked beyond compensation, right? So we want to get to that point. So now, if your dream company is Netflix and they make you an offer that's just resoundingly ridiculous, and you're like, well, that's it, dream job, dream manager, dream role, the offer is more than I was even thinking I would even get, sure. But if it's not, we don't want to accept that first offer, okay? This is, I wouldn't necessarily say this is a mistake, but I would say it's something to keep in mind here. And more so, I think we don't want to just look at FAANG companies. If your FAANG company or the main companies now, since it's no longer Facebook, are your target, then absolutely think about it. But there are a lot of small companies and mid-sized companies that have very strong compensation packages because they have to compete with those main type companies, right? Maybe you want a smaller team. Maybe you don't want to be siloed in a 195,000 person organization. Maybe you can make pretty similar money in an organization that's 10,000 people, right? Have bigger scope, bigger responsibilities, those type of things. So it's not necessarily a mistake, but don't limit yourself based on, you know, the companies that maybe want to speak with you. Maybe there's something that excites you about them. Taking all those things into consideration, okay?